Welcome to the Aravosis Report. I'm John Aravosis. Hello, everybody on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm pretty sure that's it. Friday. How's everybody doing? Not the Russians, everybody else. Doing okay? I'm okay, I think. Nothing too exciting going on for the weekend, but hello, everybody. Sasha's here resting. Yes, she's resting behind me on the little carpet in her little bed. The TikTok people can barely see. Oh, thank you for that on TikTok. The TikTokers, you can see the bed and the red sheet, and you can barely see a little bit of cream color. That's Sasha in the middle of the sheet. So the TikTokers, it's a subtle view. You guys can't see. Anyway, as always, good amount of news today. Thank you, Kevin. As always, guys, if you want to just sort of introduce yourselves, say where you are from. I think that's always kind of a nice thing to do. And I will start us off with the housekeeping, etc. Okay. Just the usual, hopefully finding something interesting to do this weekend. So let me get my notes together here. As always, this is the Aravosis Report. I go for about 20, 25 minutes, usually to like half past the hour. Updating you guys on the latest Ukraine news. And then we open it up to questions. We talk about, variety of different things, whatever you guys want to talk about, usually Ukraine. And we go from there. To submit, thank you for the gift on TikTok. I'm going to get to the gifts in a second. To submit questions on TikTok, go to my profile and go to the Q&A link. That's the only way to do it now. TikTok's been changing things. On YouTube, obviously, you can use the submission box at the bottom, the comment box. Thank you for that on TikTok. And as I am independent media, I appreciate any support you guys can give me. I am trying to do this full time, and I'm doing it for free, so to speak. The only income I'm getting is the income you guys are giving me. So I appreciate you helping me out with the super chat questions and with the gifts on TikTok, and I will always try to do a shout out when I see each of them. Super chat questions, by the way, I will make a point of getting to them as the next question if I see them. And when I don't, the moderators and others are very nice about pointing them out. For you guys on TikTok, what I'll also do is for the people who are TikTok subscribers, I can hit a little button on the bottom of my TikTok screen, and it'll only show me the questions from the subscribers or the comments. For example, the real Matosh, Frette, Flower Lady, the real Matosh, Nick, Carol, Iggy. And it's kind of a nice way that I will then try to answer questions from you guys first if you've got them. So that's another gift we'll do for subscribers on TikTok. And let's just get rolling. Okay, here we go. So there was a phone call today. We're not going to get the details of it, but not surprisingly, because we shouldn't get the details of it. Thank you, Motec. But U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had a phone call with his counterpart, the Minister of Defense of Russia, Shoigu, and no one really knows what they talked about other than the U.S. put out kind of a general statement and Russia put out a general statement. I'll read it to you, but, no great surprise here. Thank you for the gift on TikTok. I see that in the corner of my eye. According to the U.S. side, Austin emphasized the importance of maintaining lines of communication amid the ongoing crisis. Russia's defense ministry said the two officials discussed relevant aspects of international security, including the situation in Ukraine. So, I would actually say this is a good thing. Not just a good thing that they're talking, but it's a good thing that neither side is really saying what they talked about, because first of all, it sounds like they had a decent phone call. If they had a bad phone call, they might have talked about it and said, just going off about each other. So good thing that they're not going public about it, and good thing that they're talking, because in the end, especially on the Russian side, we're obviously very worried about what Putin may do. It's good for other senior Russian officials to have the ear, or potentially the ear, and us have their ear back and forth. On the war front, Russia conducted 3 missile attacks and 24 airstrikes in the past day, hitting more than 15 settlements across Ukraine, including in the Kherson and Kharkiv regions. As always, my handy-dandy t-shirt map. Kherson is the region down here. Very busy region going on. We're going to talk about that a lot today. And Kharkiv is actually the region right here. Kharkiv, the city, is Ukraine's second largest town. It's second largest city. It's 1.5 million people. Thank you, Baby Shoe, for that on TikTok. And it goes, around here. I'm going to do a rough estimate of where it is. The fighting has been going on in the eastern area of Kharkiv, right where it meets Luhansk, up around here. That's where a lot of the fighting's been going on in the east. And as I said, the fighting in the south has been going on in Kherson. Now, Kherson is getting very interesting, the region in the south, because that's the area where it looks like in the next 6 weeks, if not the next couple weeks, the Russians may lose that city. This is a big deal. It may also be the biggest victory the Ukrainians, or I should say, the last big victory the Ukrainians have before winter kicks in, because once winter kicks in, initially it becomes super wet and muddy, and neither side can really advance. So the thought is, in about 6 weeks, things may get locked in to where they are for a while. That's at least the thought. Now, let me show you on the map here. Again, so you got Kherson. That's the big one we're going to talk about today. Again, it's where most stuff is happening. If I always like to show you guys, I sort of get up close if you can see, but you can basically see. There's the river that goes through all of Ukraine called the Dnipro River, okay? Or I guess that's how we say it in English, or I don't even know which, I don't know if that's English or Ukrainian, but the Dnipro River cuts all the way through. Generally speaking, Russia's troops are on the east side of the river, okay? So Russia is doing the fighting around here. They're occupying and fighting all along here. Basically, they occupy all of this, and the fighting is happening, kind of along here until you get to Kherson. There is a blip above the river here in the Kherson province where Russian troops are actually north of the river. And the fighting is going on north of the river, and the town of Kherson, which is, the capital city of the Kherson region, is also north of the river. That's a big deal. There are about somewhere between 15 and 25,000 Russian troops. I see both numbers bandied about north of that river. They are separated from the Russian troops south of the river. Okay. Again, Russia may have 150,000 or more troops in Ukraine. 15,000 to 25,000 are isolated from the rest north of the river. The Ukrainians have been blowing up the bridges across that river for the last 2 months. And there were about 4 bridges. They are pretty much destroyed. I mean, they might sustain pedestrian traffic, like citizens can walk across or civilians, but any kind of military vehicle, no way. So what the Russians have had to do, they've been building these pontoon bridges that they used before in the east. And very famously, remember a few months ago how the Ukrainians just destroyed a Russian pontoon bridge when it had a bunch of tanks on top? The Russians have not had a lot of luck with their pontoon bridges. And the Ukrainians went after one of them again last night. And actually, I just saw a photo of it really brilliantly. So the pontoon bridge is kind of what it sounds like, a floating bridge, but very strong floating bridge that can take military equipment, this kind of stuff, right? Well, what the Ukrainians did was they took out a big chunk of the bridge. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. They took out a big chunk of the bridge, but they did it in relatively shallow water. So the pontoon bridge half sank and half is sticking out of the water. And what this means is they have to drag that piece out of the river before they can continue the pontoon bridge, because literally it's like pontoon, and then this 10-foot or 20-foot segment half collapsed, and now you can't replace it without getting rid of it first. Well, they're saying getting rid of it is going to take days to do. So rather smart of the Ukrainians. Oh, hi from Irpin. Hi, Yorgi. We see somebody from Irpin, Ukraine weighing in on TikTok. Everybody give a little hello to Yorgi there. I'm saying Yorgi. That's how we say it in English, in Greek, I mean. So that's what's going. Thank you for the gifts on TikTok. So that's kind of, I mean, I've got a lot of news about Kherson, but that's the general situation. Is the Russians are expected to have to retreat in the next 6 weeks because the Ukrainians are taking the north, and to retreat, the Russians need to go across that river. Okay. Now, there are reports of looting by the Russian troops. This just got me. Now, mind you, this story sounds totally credible. When you read it, just listen to this, okay? And tell me this doesn't sound like the Russian troops, with everything we know about them stealing washing machines and stealing little kids' toys and everything else that they've stolen in eastern Ukraine especially. The Kherson city, Telegram accounts of the city of Kherson claimed on October 20th, which would be yesterday, that Russian forces disbanded and looted a fire station in Kherson City and ferried fire trucks, stolen civilian cars, and other miscellaneous household items across the Dnipro River to Hola Pristan. Hola Pristan is literally just across the river, just south of Kherson, the city right here. Not only did they steal a bunch of goods, but by this report, they broke into the fire station and stole the fire trucks and drove them south of the river so they could use them. I mean, just incredible. There was another report from Alexander Sherba, who I follow on Twitter, who's a former Ukrainian diplomat, I believe long time in the diplomatic corps. I think he's retired, or at least retired from the diplomatic corps right now. And he tweeted, I'm just going to read you his tweet as written. Last night withdrawing, Russia was trying to steal equipment of the Ukrainian TV company in Kherson. So Russia was withdrawing from Kherson. Again, they've been crossing the river, and they were stealing the equipment from the local TV station. The equipment had GPS on, so the HIMARS strike by Ukraine was especially effective. Again, we can't verify this stuff. It smacks of being real because we know about Russia's history about basically, unfortunately, looting a lot of the Ukrainian goods. There are also reports and satellite imagery that are showing Russians moving military equipment from the west side or the north side, right? Because you got west but north, from this side of the river to this side of the river. It looks like the Russians are withdrawing, and actually not stupid of the Russians, because what the Russians did before in all the other areas, especially in the east, they were getting destroyed by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainian troops, thank you, Bonnie, the Ukrainian troops were coming through. The Russians weren't withdrawing. Putin wasn't letting them withdraw. Thank you for that, Paula. Putin wasn't letting them withdraw. Like in the east especially, Putin said, nope, we're not going to let you withdraw. You're going to sit where you are. Well, what happens? The Ukrainians would pummel them, and then at the last minute, the Russians would have to run away. And when they ran away, they'd have to leave all their equipment behind. So the Ukrainians got tanks, fighting vehicles, lots of ammunition. I mean, they've got a ton of equipment, and it's equipment they can use because Ukraine, like Russia, used to be part of the Soviet Union. So they've got a lot of the same equipment. They know how to use it, and it's been very useful to the Ukrainians. So the fact that the Russians may be already leaving and trying to move, in addition to all the stolen material, trying to move some of their own vehicles south and east of the river is very smart. Not good for the Ukrainians, but very smart of the Russians. It shows that they're learning something here. Moscow claims that 4 civilians, including 2 Russian journalists, were killed in Kherson, the same province, late Thursday night, meaning late last night, as state media quoted a Russian proxy official, meaning an official collaborator, a collaborator Ukrainian working for the Russian occupiers, saying that a Ukrainian strike targeted the bridge, while a local pro-Ukrainian media outlet reported that it was being used by retreating Russian forces. So the reason I brought this story up is now we've got another piece of the story. Again, these are individual pieces of the stories. It's impossible for anybody to verify any of this completely, obviously, because it's stuff that's happening in the middle of a war over there. But a pro-Ukrainian media outlet is saying that the Russians, remember I told you, we do know the pontoon bridge was hit. We've seen pictures this morning of the bridge in the water. Well, apparently there was Russian troops were trying to cross the bridge when it was hit. So they were hit as well, according to the Ukrainian outlet. So again, smart of the Ukrainians for what they're doing. Thank you, Drew. I appreciate that. What else we got here? Kherson, more on the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant and dam. This is a dam that the Ukrainians are very worried that the Russians are going to blow up sometime soon. We in the West are worried about it as well. The Institute for the Study of War, which is a very good defense think tank here in Washington, D.C., they wrote it up yesterday, expressing concern, and wrote it up again today, saying that it looks like the Russians are basically putting out messaging in order to defend a false flag operation with the dam. Now, it's a hydroelectric dam. They set up a dam, big reservoir of water. I was able to confirm something you guys had mentioned yesterday, because Zelensky actually talked about it today. The dam is that same river, the Dnipro River. Okay. Actually, I'm going to thank you, Drew. I'm going to get rid of your gift so we can see the map better. So you've got the Dnipro River coming down. You've got the town of Kherson here north of the river. You currently have all the Ukrainian forces north of the river fighting the Russians. Okay. The dam, pretty much right here where you get the first bend in the river comes like this and then goes up. So where you've got the bend in the river is where the dam is. And it ends up creating a very large reservoir of water backed up that goes all the way to the nuclear plant, which is up here at the tip of my finger, basically down to the right, so southeast of Nikopol. This is Nikopol. So right here, you see how the land kind of juts up a little bit? Right here is where the nuclear plant is. Well, this dam is enough that it builds up water behind and creates a reservoir that the nuclear plant uses. There's been a lot of concern that the Russians are basically, like I said, trying to do a false flag. And what a false flag is when, thank you for the hat there, Cloud. When I won't even give you an example. I'll give you the Russian example. Russia, the concern is preparing to blow up the dam and blaming Ukraine for it. Okay. And they've already been expressing concern. The general in charge of the invasion made some comment the other day about he's very concerned that the Ukrainians are going to try to blow up the dam. And then the local collaborator in the region said the same thing, very concerned the Ukrainians are going to try to blow it up. And what that means to everybody in the West is the Russians are planning to blow up the dam, and they're going to try to blame the Ukrainians for it. Now, why would they do this? Well, first of all, the Russians pretty much have accepted that they're going to have to abandon Kherson. It's going to probably happen in the next couple of weeks. When they do that, they've got to go south. South is where the rest of their troops are. This is where they're going to, thank you for the hat there, Shane. This is where they're going to regroup. When they do that, they don't want the Ukrainian troops chasing them. So the thought is they're going to blow the dam, flood all of this area, and it makes it either it kills all the Ukrainian troops by drowning them, or it creates a flood that the Ukrainian troops can't cross easily, right? And that way the Russian troops can get away, they can regroup, they can dig in and defend themselves. That's the thought of what's going on. Added advantage is that it can potentially cause a meltdown in the nuclear plant, which we know the Russians have been playing nuclear terrorism with the plant for a while now. Zelensky weighed in on this. Let me just read you the quote from Zelensky, I think last night or this morning. If Russian terrorists blow up this dam, more than 80 settlements, including Kherson, will be in the zone of rapid flooding. Hundreds of thousands of people may suffer. Water supply to a large part of southern Ukraine could be destroyed. This Russian terrorist attack could leave the Zaporizhia nuclear plant without water for cooling. Water for the Zaporizhia plant is taken from the Kakhovka reservoir, he said. So, keep an eye on this. There's a lot of things going on. Who knows if the Russians would do it? I mean, I don't know. Let me put it this way. I would not put it past the Russians doing this, of course. But whether this is a bluff or whether it's real, it's looking like it might be real. Kenneth, thank you for that. Oh, it's a super sticker. Thank you, Kenneth. Okay, sorry. I wanted to make sure you didn't mean to ask a question. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Let me see here. Yep, exactly. Daniel weighed in and said the dam provides water to the Zaporizhia nuclear plant that it uses for cooling. Exactly. All right, let me keep going here. So more proof that the sanctions are working. Moscow has been, this is from the U.S. State Department today, Moscow has been forced to cannibalize existing airline parts it can no longer obtain abroad. Now, just to remind you on this, if you guys were following this from the beginning, the Russians were cut off from really the beginning of the war. Thank you for that, Bonnie. From the beginning of the war, the Russians were cut off from, actually, make sure to follow me on TikTok and YouTube. I did forget to say that I mentioned the gifts, which I very much appreciate the gifts. Keep them coming, but also make sure to follow me. I always forget to ask you guys to do that. And that's something you can do for free, but it really helps me out. So please do follow me on both of these. At the beginning of the war, Boeing and Airbus, I think, were the two companies, because they're the biggest, builders of planes. They cut off the maintenance parts and the maintenance manuals for Russian aircraft. And a lot of these are, for the commercial fleet. And basically planes, like every 2 weeks or whatever it is, planes have to be repaired, and the Boeing and Airbus cut off the replacement parts so Russia wouldn't have them. And they also cut off the electronic manuals. That kind of makes sense. Nowadays, you look up airplane manuals online. You don't necessarily keep a huge book. And they cut off their access. So it's going to be harder for the Russians to keep their planes in shape because they won't have instructions, but also they won't have the parts. So they've been having to cannibalize other planes. That's what this is talking about. Now, listen to this, though. Russian production of hypersonic ballistic missiles has almost ceased as it reverts to Soviet-era defense stocks instead. The hypersonic missiles were that missile that Putin was really proud of. Remember the missile he shot off and said it goes 5 times, either was it 5 times the speed of sound or 5 times the speed of a normal missile? I just remember it was like 5 times faster. I think it's 5 times the speed of existing missiles is what I think it was. And Putin they were doing it to be like how tough they were and we should all be scared of them and this kind of garbage, right? Well, that missile of 5 times the speed of, I'm seeing both from you guys. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. But is it Mach 5 then? Yeah, 5 times the speed of light. Now that would be cool. That would be Warp 5, but not Mach 5. But nonetheless, that's very cool. That's very very cool. The sanctions have basically put that thing to a halt because Putin was so proud of it, and the Russians were announcing it because they were basically trying to, and they did freak some people out. People were asking me and going, "Does this mean like they could attack us and get away with it?" And I was like, "Well, not with nuclear weapons, no, because we've got submarines, and our submarines would attack back." Belarus still a bluff. Let me show you. Handy dandy t-shirt map. Belarus is the country that is up here. Russia is all over here. Okay. And I mean, and going way up and everything else. Belarus is a country up here, run by a dictator, big friend of Putin. And they have been bluffing for a while now, acting like, they're getting ready to attack Ukraine. Russian troops allegedly have been moving in there. And there's been concern by some people about whether the Belarusians and the Russians were going to invade from the north. The UK Defense Intelligence, UK Ministry of Defense Intelligence folks, there we go, let me be precise here, weighed in and gave a little update on this. Listen to this. On October 14th, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that 70,000 Belarusian troops and up to 15,000 Russians would be involved in a new Russian-Belarusian group of forces. Now, this is Lukashenko claiming this. On October 15th, the Belarusian authorities released a video claiming to show the arrival of Russian troops in Belarus. However, to date, it is unlikely that Russia has actually deployed a significant number of extra troops into Belarus. Russia is unlikely to be able to generate combat-ready formations of the claimed size. Its forces are committed in Ukraine, which is what we've been saying all along, right? Russia doesn't have extra forces to move in there. The Belarusian military highly likely maintains minimal capability to undertake complex operations. That's a nice way of saying the Belarusian military sucks, is what they're saying. And there's no way they could do some joint invasion with Russia. They just wouldn't be able to pull it off. The announcement is likely an attempt to demonstrate Russian-Belarusian solidarity and to convince Ukraine to divert forces to guard the northern border. This is something I've been telling you guys for a while. Is look again where I've been talking about the front of the war being, okay? The big fighting is going on over here in the east, in eastern Kharkiv, here, northern Kherson. So here and here is where the fighting's taking place. Where is the Belarusian border? All the way up here. They're trying to force the Ukrainians to move more troops up here just in case the Belarusians and the Russians are going to invade, even though they think it's a bluff. They can't be stupid about it and ignore the border entirely. So they're hoping to scare the Ukrainians enough that the Ukrainians move troops from here and here rather than and put them here instead. So again, this is what I've been talking about. It's a bluff, and it's not a stupid bluff. I mean, because it possibly will make the Ukrainians move some of their troops. In other news, there was a new UN report that came out today about Russian war crimes. Hang on a sec, sip of water. The New York Times summarized it. Investigators found evidence of civilian torture and forced confinement. In one instance, Russian soldiers held 365 civilians including 70 children, in the basement of a local school for 28 days. There was no light, no ventilation, no showers, and no toilets. 28 days, including 70 children. Victims said the soldiers took their phones and threatened to shoot them if they failed to obey orders. Thank you for the thing on TikTok. And that the basement was so crowded, mind you, 365 people, okay? 365 people. The basement was so crowded that some had to sleep in chairs or standing up for weeks on end, okay? People had to sleep standing up because there was no room to lie down. 365 people? I mean, I can't even imagine being in that situation. And again, it's enough for adults, but 70 children. Several people died, not surprisingly. The report also found evidence that Russian military used explosive weapons in populated civilian areas, deliberately killing civilians and attacking indiscriminately without feasible precautions to reduce civilian harm. In other words, A, they were intentionally trying to kill civilians in some places, and B, in other places, they knew they were going to kill civilians and they did nothing that to take. There were precautions they could have taken to make sure the weapon killed military and not civilians, and they didn't take the precaution. That's what that means. In other words, they were grossly negligent, we would say, in American law. Other documented violations included the destruction of hospitals and schools. Thank you for that, Epsilon. And sexual and gender-based violence. The report found this was really interesting. Listen to this, and this is the closing part of this story. The report found 2 instances of war crimes committed by Ukrainian forces: abuse of Russian prisoners of war, but said that Russian forces are responsible for most violations. This was the war crime we heard about months ago. Remember? And I think there was video of it, of Ukrainians abusing Russian. They may have even killed them. I don't remember if they killed them or tortured them or what they did, but it was public. We all acknowledged it. We all said it's a war crime. It's bad. Don't do that, right? You don't hear that on the Russian side. You don't hear, right? I'm pro-Ukraine. I'm the first person to say, I thought they killed them. I thought that was Sadie saying killed them. I thought so. Yeah, thank you for the hat there. Totally wrong. War crime. Soldiers who did it should be held accountable. It is a war crime. And some people say that. I find people sometimes in the comments on TikTok and elsewhere saying, this is war. That's what happens. And then the military people weigh in and go, no. This is not what happens in war. This is not what a professional fighting force does. You don't just commit war crimes. You don't. It's not. And when it happens, all hell is to pay, right? When Abu Ghraib happens, like what happened with American troops in Iraq, all hell was to pay. And we held them accountable in the States as well, because we were pissed at what they did. Some people might have defended them in our country, but most people were mortified at what they did. And again, I'm an American. I'm telling you right now, I'm admitting we did it, and I'm admitting it was horrific that we did it. Will you hear that from a Russian commentator? I don't think so. Not somebody defending on the Russian side of things. You won't. You'll hear it on a Russian commentator who fled the country. Yes. Russia is messing with the grain exports again. This is bad. Zelensky says that 150 ships are now backlogged in a queue in a line as a result of Russian interference. You will recall that the Russians were blocking. Thank you for that, Paul. The Russians were with a sunflower. The Russians were blocking grain exports entirely from Ukraine. Ukrainian grain, pretty much, I think, almost all of it, if not all of it, goes here through the. Oh my God, I'm already forgetting the Black Sea. Yeah, the Black Sea, and then it cuts through the Straits of Bosporus, whatever it's called, Turkey, and then goes into the Mediterranean down below. Okay, so the Russians. They've got a big naval port here at Sevastopol because remember, this is Crimea, the territory that the Russians stole. So the grain comes out of Odessa, but the Russians were stopped. They weren't allowing any grain exports to happen. Well, that was a big problem for Ukraine in terms of the money that Ukraine was losing, but it was an even bigger problem for North Africa and for the Middle East, where the grain shipments were destined for, and people were not getting drained. The Russians were doing it so that they could just, cause as much chaos as possible. Well, Zelensky says the food shipments that are now being stopped are at least backed up by the Russians. 150 boats are backed up. food deliveries to Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Lebanon, Iraq, China, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. And the last story I've got is interesting. Oh, actually, it's pretty good. 6:30. Okay, this is good. I went about 25 minutes. That was my goal. We got about half hour for questions. The last story, I just thought this was interesting. There is a business enterprise, an industrial enterprise on fire in Belgorod, Russia. Belgorod is a Russian town that is right across the border from Kharkiv, right here. Kharkiv, Ukrainian city, 1.5 million people. Thank you, Mias, for that. Kharkiv is maybe 15, 20 miles from the border, maybe 15. Belgorod is another like 20, 25 miles across the border. So, I don't know, 40 kilometers across the border. It's very close. Well, Belgorod, a lot of things blow up in Belgorod because, the other thing to show you is since Belgorod is right here and it's I believe the largest city in the area on the Russian side, it is a key center for transporting military goods, military men, military vehicles, ammunition to the Russian troops fighting in the east. So the Ukrainians have been, we assume the Ukrainians, they haven't admitted it, but who else would it be? The Ukrainians have been blowing up Russian fuel depots in Belgorod, for fuel. They've been blowing up weapons, ammunition depots, and now an industrial plant is burning. This is great. It was burning after it was hit by a projectile. Ukraine has not officially commented on it. So, you can take a guess here. All right, guys, that's it for the questions. Not for the questions, but for the news. Let me jump into the questions and let's talk Ukraine for the next half hour. For starters, what I'll do is, let me see really quick if any of the subscribers have questions. Yeah, exactly. If any subscribers have questions, feel free to enter them on TikTok because I can hit the subscriber only button and ask your guys' questions first. For the rest of you, same thing on YouTube. Obviously, just use the comment box, enter a question. Syndicate is asking any more info about the 2 deep sea internet cables that have been destroyed. I did not see anything more on that. There were some internet cables destroyed that were going to the Shetland Islands, okay, of the UK, but Scotland, in northern Scotland, northern UK, I guess across from Norway. And, the authorities are trying to present it as no big deal. Right? This happens all the time, not to this degree. Apparently, this was the worst cable cutting they've ever had. But every few years, a fishing trawler or something accidentally, the cables are in the seabed. Somehow it or an anchor or something catches the cables and nicks them, whatever. This is apparently the biggest damage that's caused yet to it. It's certainly, look, the timing is suspicious. It's possible. It's also possible it's a coincidence. The timing is suspicious. If I were the Russians, the Faroe Islands too. Oh, does it support the Faroe as well? If I were the Russians and I wanted to start scaring people, I would start doing things like this. I would want to start demonstrating my ability to start damaging the cables. For example, already they demonstrated their ability to blow up pipelines. Right? Because they did it with the pipelines with the 99.9% chance it was the Russians blowing up the natural gas pipelines from Russia to Europe. And now they could be doing it with these internet cables. I assume they're fiber optic, whatever they are, to show, hey, America and Europe, we can do it to the rest of you too, not just to the Faroe Islands and the Shetland Islands, right? So, but we don't know. And I don't want to presume, but I think it's fair to put it out there and say, keep an eye on this issue just to make sure. But, let me see here real quick. Okay, it's me. Calum was asking the same thing. There you go, Calum. I answered yours and his question. Are there any sanctions that have not been placed on Russia? Nick Pereira. Nick, there seem to be a lot because we keep finding out about new ones every day. I think the big sanctions remaining most likely are the banking sanctions have not fully, thank you, Yasmin. The banking sanctions have not fully been implemented, meaning we've not cut Russia off entirely from the banking system. Large part of the reason for that is because we are still letting Russia export oil and natural gas, in part because, in large part, Europe, we didn't want to have Europe be entirely cut off, right? Now, Russia has been cutting off natural gas to Europe, and Europe by December may be independent. I believe the EU, from what I recall here, thank you, dear Benji. From what I recall, the EU set a plan in place to be energy independent from Russia with regards to oil by December of this year. So, that's great, but nonetheless, we didn't want to cut off all the banks because that would have cut off all of. And the other problem with actually cutting off all the banks is Russia selling grain itself. Russia sells grain as well around the world. We don't want to stop people in Africa and the Middle East and Latin America if it goes there too from eating, right? So, that's that. Is it true that Russia and China are planning a collaborative gold-backed currency? I have no idea, dear Benji. I have no idea. I haven't even heard of that. I can't imagine that China would want to be in bed with Russia economically. That's crazy. That's just crazy. Because China is an ascendant economic power. Russia is, Russia's Russia. It's a two-bit economic power. We're bigger, we're more important than, Europe's way more important than I just can't imagine going to bed. Now, I know they've been talking about what's the word I'm looking for? Not a cryptocurrency, but a e-currency or whatever you want to call it. The Chinese already have. Don't the Chinese already have one that they're using? Some kind of an e-crypto, kind of their own cryptocurrency thing, because they banned crypto in general, but they've also, I know they've been at least planning on their own, but can't imagine they do it with Russia. That just seems crazy. Sky Queen, what is your plans when the war in Ukraine slows down over the winter? If it slows down, I will cover other news. Absolutely. Yeah. For example, we are heading into the US election season in 2 weeks. We've got the big congressional elections, very important elections here in America. I am certainly going to be covering that more. Certainly election night itself, I'll be doing a lot of coverage and doing a lot of updates on TikTok. I'm actually going to have my friend Cliff Schechter, who I did my podcast with for 4 years. We finally called it quits earlier this year. But Cliff is one of the most brilliant people I know. Thank you for the cauldron there. One of the most brilliant people I know about elections. And he's going to, Cliff's genius. Oh, also Cliff, I think, has a what do you call it? The memory thing where they, photographic memory. Cliff will talk to you about congressional districts and go, okay, well, you've got to understand that part of Virginia, you go back 30 years, traditionally Republican. And so he knows all those details. He's going to come on with us probably next Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time, US, for a good hour. And we're just going to talk about the elections and every House, Senate, everything going on. And Cliff's great, like I said, because you can ask about specific races, your state. We'll see if we can get him a little longer because it's dinner time with his family, so he's got kids. But anyway, we will be getting into that. But yeah, I'm going to definitely do other issues as they come up because I'm going to keep doing this. Let's put it this way. The war in Ukraine ends tomorrow because Russia concedes and Ukraine gets all its land back. I'm not going to hang things up. I'm just going to keep doing news. We'll find other news to do because God knows there will be other news. Thank you for the seafloor. I haven't seen that one in a while. I always like that one. The Real. Let me see here. I want to make sure I'm not Elise. Yes, where is Elise's? Oh, there it is. Elise, you were after Sky Queen. And I will look at the TikTok. Hang on. I'll look at all the TikTok right now. What the heck is going on with Schultz? Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, wanting to sell a large interest in the Hamburg port to China. Woo! That sounds crazy. You'd think Germany would be wary of such deals by now. Not really related, but sort of related. What Elise is referring to is the fact that Germany has, the first Nord Stream pipeline, and I want to say wasn't that thing built in the 1980s, I think, comes into Germany. That's the pipeline that Russia cut off all the natural gas to because they're trying to punish Germany this winter for supporting Ukraine. And the second Nord Stream pipeline that was supposed to open up this year, again, natural gas pipeline, was coming in or did come into Germany, and the Germans, to their credit, refused to certify it and start it running. So Elise's point is, you would think the Germans government kind of figured out that, tying its wagon to some of these governments might be somewhat risky. But yeah, selling a large interest in the port of Hamburg to China, I did not see that. That I'm with you, Elise. That sounds a little crazy to me. I mean, money's money, I guess, but still, that's a little crazy. Let me look at a couple of the TikTok questions on here on my phone and the Q&A, and then we'll do some more from you guys over there. Hang on, TikTok. And make sure you do follow me on TikTok, please. And make sure you follow me over there. I appreciate it. And keep the gifts coming. Your gifts help keep my work going. Literally, because you guys are supporting my work and I appreciate it. So thank you for that. Nobody's funding me for this other than you all. Q&A. Do you think the Russians will flood the left bank of Kherson? The left bank, it's funny. I finally looked this up because it was confusing me. The left bank of Kherson is, I believe, the southern and the east bank, okay? Because the river flows down. You guys taught me this. The bank left and right is based on the flow of the river, which makes sense, but I never kind of realized it. Some flooding will happen to let me call it the southern bank and the northern bank, okay? Because they're right in that region, it's north and south. The Russians are hoping to flood the northern bank because the Ukrainians are going to be there, and it's also going to be recently liberated, but they're going to be flooding the southern bank as well because there's no way to do one without the other. So yeah, they're absolutely, if they do it, it will flood the bank to the south as well. Yep. And I think there's a good chance of the current planning. I think they'll do it. Oh yeah, not Ukraine, but Twitter, China invading Taiwan by the end of the year trending. Any fact to this? I tried looking at this right before I came on. There was yesterday or so, a U.S. defense official, I don't remember if it was a former or current, but talking about we've got to be prepared for China to invade Taiwan before 2024. I then saw a criticism of the reporting on that, saying that he wasn't predicting China will invade Taiwan by then. He was saying militarily, we have to be prepared for it. Whatever whatever we're planning defense-wise, we can't be planning stuff for 2027, 2028. We've got to be prepared for 2024. What that reminds me of is me talking about Russia nuking Ukraine. I don't think Russia's going to nuke Ukraine, but I think it's a bluff. But I think we have to take the threat seriously, and we have to prepare as though Russia does nuke Ukraine. We have to have everything in a row, what we're planning on doing, make sure all the European allies agree with us as to what the next step is, because the next step could involve blowing up a Russian port. I mean, who knows, right? But the fact that I say we need to be prepared for Russia using a nuke does not mean I believe Russia will use a nuke. So that was some of the issue with that story I heard. There is another story out today with somebody else saying that Russia could do it by, or Ukraine, what was it? Taiwan could do it. What did we say? By the end of this year? Was that the I think that was the quote. By the end of the year. Yeah. I don't think, I hope not. I mean, I will say this. One of the things that I thought about, I don't want to get too off on China, but one of the things I was thinking about is, if you're thinking like the Chinese, or frankly, anybody out there, you're thinking, well, right now, America is occupied, Europe is occupied. They gave a lot of their weapons to Ukrainians. Sure, they've still got a lot more, but if the U.S. defense stockpile was at 100%, now it's at 80% or whatever it is, right? It's fewer. And therefore, if you were going to invade, maybe you would do it when the U.S. had fewer weapons than when the U.S. had more weapons. Maybe you would do it when the U.S. was already worried about one war, so that two wars would be more trying. It would be more taxing, So, but having said that, I also think that, and actually Roshin's saying this. China cares about their economy. That's all. But the point is, China does care about their economy. And the Ukrainian example showed an incredible solidarity amongst Western countries. Actually, I don't even want to say Western countries because I don't know whether that includes Asia when we say that, because we had a lot of, I mean, Japan's been amazing, so we've had solidarity with Asian countries as well, whether you call them West versus Russia, perhaps, but they're not really Western countries. But that should give pause to the Chinese, because they're looking and saying, okay, there was massive cohesion and there was massive economic sanctions like nobody expected we would pass, right? Nobody thought we would get together and do what we did to Russia with. Now, you can debate how much effect they're having right now. Nonetheless, they're huge sanctions, and against a country like China, whereas Roshin said, China cares about one thing, the economy. They care about two things, the economy and Taiwan, obviously, but nonetheless, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, let's hope they don't. Jamie, did you see that Russia had 2 failed nuclear tests? And do you think a third test would be clear sabotage? I did not see that. When did that happen? Now, the thing is, it would be risky for us to sabotage a Russian nuclear test, I think. Even though it sounds suspicious, it would be risky because, Russia could interpret that as an attack by us on them. And we know that Biden has been very cautious about worrying about getting Putin angry and how Putin might escalate and this kind of stuff. If Biden isn't willing to give Ukraine longer range rockets to use in its HIMARS, I doubt he's going to okay the CIA or whoever, putting a virus or whatever it is that foils a Russian nuclear test. I think Biden would be too cautious, even though I agree with you. It sounds suspicious. Having said that, look at the Russia we know now. Could the Russia we know fail 2 nuclear tests in a row? Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, could be internal sabotage as well. Yeah. I mean, it could be anything, but they could just be, Russian military, not so good. Daniel O'Neill, suppose Ukraine could average 300. Suppose Ukraine could average 300 Russian killed in actions a day, which I believe they've been having. We don't hear about it a lot, but that's around the number they're talking about, I think. It would take about 48 weeks to have 100,000 killed in action, plus you would expect 300,000 wounded. Okay, that sounds about right. If so, how does this all look in a year? Well, in a year, it's pretty much what you just said, 48, 52, right? 100,000, that would be 100,000 additional killed. Well, it depends what you mean. Depends whether you mean additional or ongoing, but we've seen estimates now of Russia potentially having, what was it? Wasn't it, no, it was, I'm trying to remember, was the high, now I know the Ukrainians are saying more, but I'm trying to think what we were saying. Actually, no, remember I told you General Hertling, who was this American general. He was the head of the U.S. Army in Europe. Very smart guy, very interesting. You can find him on just Hertling, Hertling. Google him, Mark Hertling. Very smart guy. He's on CNN a lot. Hertling the other day tweeted that Russia that Russia had 60,000 deaths among its military. And I wrote him back on Twitter because he answers sometimes. I said, did you mean to say Russia's had 60,000 troops die? Because you often see figures in the West of 30,000 die, maybe another 50,000 wounded, something like that. But you see Ukraine talking about 65,000 dead, but you don't see the West. So in either way, Russia's going to have a lot of deaths and a lot of wounded if this goes on for another year. I mean, whether you take Daniel's exact numbers or not, clearly. The other thing, I didn't even mention it. One of the things I was going to tell you, I think it was in my notes, is Putin just sent another 2,000 or 3,000 of the newly mobilized troops to Kherson. So basically, it looks like he's moving the good troops out and he's putting in these new guys who don't have any training, who don't know what they're doing. and they're going to get slaughtered by the Ukrainians. They're going to absolutely get slaughtered. So, what does the war look like? The war looks like a lot of Russia's getting slaughtered. And then the question becomes, do the Russian people rise up? Do the mothers rise up? Yeah, Chris S. is saying 75,000 out of service. That's what I was hearing. I was hearing 70,000 to 90,000 out of service, they were saying, which includes death, the conventional wisdom. It includes death. It includes wounded. It includes desertions. It includes injured, but injured to the point where, they can't go back, or they're in the hospital, or drowned. Yeah, because of the bridge is sinking. But either way, no, it's a lot. It's a lot. Now, the thing to remind you of, again, Afghanistan. Russia was in Afghanistan for 10 years. It was considered a disastrous war for Russia. The Mothers Movement organized and spoke up and really caused a lot of problem, helped bring down the government, it is thought. And that was 14,500 deaths of Russian troops. Everyone agrees Russia's at 25,000 to 30,000 deaths at this point, easily. The Ukrainians say more, but conservatively, you're talking 25, 30,000. That's almost twice the deaths in Afghanistan in 8.5 months. Actually, maybe, are we hitting the 9th month now by the October 24th? Maybe 9 months. The Russians have had twice the number of deaths that they had in Afghanistan in 10 years. And the Afghanistan deaths potentially brought down a government, Russian government. So it ain't good, Daniel. Sorry, Daniel's weighing in a little bit more here. The war of attrition on the Russian side is staggering. This will cause issues for Putin. Ukraine is a second Afghanistan. Very much potentially, but this is why Putin needs to keep threatening nukes. To some degree, and look, on this, I get annoyed with Biden when Biden is always talking about, we've got to give Putin an off-ramp and this kind of stuff. It drives me a little crazy. But Biden is not wrong in that Putin is kind of stuck. And we've got to sort of figure out how to unstuck him. Now, whether that means there's a revolution at home, that would be nice. Whether it means the senior generals and the senior FSB folks say, Vlad, you're taking a long vacation. I don't know, or an early retirement. I don't know, but it's not clear how he gets out of Ukraine without just admitting he screwed up and they lost. Now, in Afghanistan, it took 10 years for that to happen. This could go on. This could go on for a while. They could have nationwide mobilization, right? And keep sending men there who don't know what they're doing. It's. I don't feel sorry for him, obviously. But I worry that something has to happen at home for Putin to end this. I worry that Putin will never get to the point where he says, okay, I've killed too many, forget, he doesn't care about the Ukrainians, where he says, I've killed too many of my own troops for a war that we're clearly not going to win. I'm calling it off. I don't think that enters his calculus ever, unless somebody at home, basically somebody at home says, the defense, the national security folks, the FSB, which is former KGB, everybody has had it with you. You need to end this war or you're going away. But in a dictatorship like Russia, will they say that? Right? Not clear. Let me pull up another TikTok, general TikTok question. NATO prepositioned some forces in Lithuania today. Many saying because of buildup in Belarus. Could Putin be that stupid? I don't think so. What I mean is, I think that I would not be surprised if NATO prepositioned more forces in, would you say, Lithuania, just to be safe, which isn't, because I had said earlier, right? I don't think Putin is going to use nukes, but I think we have to be prepared for Putin to use nukes. I don't think Putin is going to invade the Baltic states, but we have to be prepared for him to do it. Part of the issue here, too, is, for example, what if Putin is stupid enough to use a nuke in Ukraine? Then I think we enter the war, Now, it doesn't mean we enter the war and it's U.S. troops fighting Russians and taking back Crimea or something, but I do think potentially it's U.S. troops putting a no-fly zone in and enforcing that no-fly zone. And to enforce the no-fly zone, you've got to say, and it could be all of Ukraine, and you say, 1, any Russian plane entering Ukrainian airspace is going to be shot down. You could even say any Russian plane entering within 50 miles of Ukraine, a military plane within 50 miles of Ukraine or something like that. 2, any Russian surface-to-air missiles or Russian radar that are turned on within Ukraine or within 100 miles of Ukraine, whatever, are going to be bombed by NATO. And if we do that, it doesn't mean war breaks out. It means we have now made a threat and a promise that we are going to do military action if Russia does a certain thing or two or three. We have to be prepared for Russia to do that. We have to be prepared for Russia to be stupid enough to turn on a radar at our planes. We have to be prepared for Russia to be stupid enough to send a MiG into Ukraine in a no-fly zone that we've set up. If Russia does that, we're going to fire. And if we fire, we could get into a war. So I see, I mean, this is scary stuff, but I don't think it's likely stuff. We've got to have troops pre-positioned, NATO, whoever, NATO troops in the Baltic states, in Poland. I mean, we already do, but more maybe just in case things get out of hand. Because if they get out of hand, you don't want to then go, well, we've got an extra 50,000 NATO troops, but they're all the way over in Germany. Would have been nice if they were over in Poland or the Baltic states, right? So, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on, but also I wouldn't freak out about it. Let me hit the subscriber button again on TikTok. Do any of you subscribers have no more TikTok subscriptions? I'm looking right now. Well, I try to get sort of a mix of them because we've got the YouTube ones too, the YouTube super chats, which I always like to grab. So yes, I'm looking right now. Any of you guys in the subscriber questions? All right. Thank you. I see we've got several more subscriptions today. Thank you guys. It's nice of you. All right. Not seeing any subscriber questions. That's okay. Let me then look to another one. Actually, Elise, who always makes interesting observations. If that bridge is blown and the nuclear power plant melts down, this is the bridge in Kherson I was talking about that the Russians, the bridge, it is a couple different things going on here. And the nuclear power plant melts down, there's a chance that in addition to being flooded, the whole Kherson region will be uninhabitable due to the river contamination. Oh, that's interesting. Well, it depends which way it goes. Now, she's talking about the fact that we were talking earlier during the show, and if anybody's new, by the way, I'm John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my daily update, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. And the second half of the show, first half of the show, I update you on the news. Second half of the show, I take your questions. So this is the second half. If you're on TikTok or elsewhere, please do follow me because I also do videos throughout the day. You'll see I did a few today. I'll put some more tonight as well, actually. I'll do some more videos in the evening. I do sort of chopping up my broadcast in case folks miss it. Now, what Elise is getting at, for anybody who missed the beginning of the show, there is growing concern in the West and in Ukraine itself that the Russians may try to blow up a dam, a hydroelectric plant that is based on a dam, the Kakhovka hydroelectric plant near the town of Nova Kakhovka, which is more or less right here in the bend. Might be hard for you to see, but there's a little bend here by the river. Kherson, the city, is here. This is here. Well, just upriver here is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. That's the nuclear plant you keep hearing about in the news that the Russians keep hitting with their, with whether it's artillery or what they're doing, they keep shelling it. And the concern is, and Zelensky talked about it today or last night, is that if this dam blows up, there is a reservoir that has been created. And actually, even on the map, you can see how it gets much bigger up here. There's a much bigger reservoir of water up here because of the dam. And that reservoir of water is used to help cool the nuclear plant. If the Russians blow the dam, they not only wipe out a lot of Ukrainian troops, they not only wipe out a lot of Ukrainian towns, but potentially they make it much more difficult to cool down the nuclear plant, which could lead to a nuclear meltdown. What Elise is getting at is to what degree you could have contaminated water. The only thing is, Elise, the water is going to flood below the dam. You're going to have floods. So you're going to, and I've seen some diagrams of this. Basically, this area here is going to be flooded, but the nuke plant is up here. I'm assuming this area here is going to have less water because the dam was creating a bigger reservoir. Without the dam, less water is reserving up here. So if anything, the nuclear plant has less water. So would it really contaminate the water? It's only going to contaminate the water if there's a meltdown or something like that happens. That's my thinking. I don't know whether I can tell you're rather intelligent from the questions and comments you make. So I don't know if you were getting at something else, but that's what I'm thinking at least. Let me do another question or two, guys, and then we'll call it quits for the night. Actually, once people were kind of weighing in about the nuclear plant. Let me see here. If the plant is not cooled, it will melt down. It will contaminate everything. Well, that's what I'm wondering is what Elise was saying. If Elise meant the plant melts down and then it contaminates the water. Yeah. Iran, I don't have any update right now about Iran. I've done a lot of videos, including, I did one a couple days ago. No updates other than the protests are still going on, which is great. I'm still worried about the regime finally clamping down. But let me intentionally pay a little more attention to Iran, and I'll start to do some more videos on just, even if it's just more videos of the protests, but just a little bit more of an update on what's going on for you guys, okay? But I haven't paid enough attention in the last day or two to give you much of an update, really. Decline in Russian population and their ability to sustain losses long term. Some people think that's to some degree why the Russians keep stealing the Ukrainian population and kidnapping them and bringing them to Russia. It's because of population decline, possibly. Okay, was asking about the population decline. Is it only a nuclear strike? Rob is asking. You were a physics major. Okay, no, I could tell you, Elise. Elise was a physics major. No, I could tell you know stuff. She knows things. But thank you, Sid. I appreciate that in South Dakota. Rob Wall is saying, is it only a nuclear strike that would draw us and NATO directly into the war? No, I mean, you could have a chemical or biological weapons attack, right? I mean, that could easily do it. Beyond that, the thing is, other than that, you might have to have the Russians doing something akin to World War II, setting up concentration camps, lining up hundreds of civilians and killing them. I mean, we know that they've killed a lot of civilians, right? But something more blatant. I don't know. I mean, the nuclear one's the obvious one. Chemical and biological gets interesting. Less than that, they'd have to do something. Well, like I said, though, they blow up this dam. Yeah, I'll go on Discord for a bit afterwards. Yeah. Motek Missy was asking if I'm going to go on my Discord. Dude, we have a dude. We had a dude. I always joke, for you TikTok folks, I'm always joking about the fact that the Russian trolls have clearly been giving these talking points. And one of their talking points is to try to sound American. So they say dude a lot, but they say it and it just doesn't sound quite right. And this guy, America is outdated, dude. And I mean, anybody who's a native English speaker, you know what I mean? America is outdated, dude. I mean, outdated is like your clothing. It doesn't really work in this context. And dude, just to make the dude, they said, throw on the dude because it will make you sound American. Oh, yes. But I love, and one of the mods totally got it. Yeah, bruh. They like to say bruh a lot too. Like bruh for brother. Bruh, dude. But that was great. America's outdated, dude. I know, actually, Poppy, Wendy is, I forgot to ask you about that, Wendy. Wendy was going to work on a Russia's losing dude t-shirt. We wanted to sell that in the store. I'm going to get going, guys, because we are going to go on the Discord for a little bit. I don't want to do my voice too much. I had a while there that I had lost my voice. Well, I was doing the show anyway, but my voice was really bad for about 5 weeks. But I've got a Discord, which you are free to join us on. The Discord's free. But if you want to support me, you can certainly go and buy a VIP subscription, which you can do via Patreon. I'll tell you right now where the Discord is because we're going there right now. It's discord.aravosis.com. If you want to find my Discord, my Patreon, for example, again, I'm doing this for free. This is my, I have been doing this full time. And your guys' support helps a lot. What would really help, and I'll say this for other creators as well, is consistent income. That's right. Let me do the quick recap too. Consistent income, and that would mean, for example, going to my Patreon and just becoming a contributor there. That would be amazing. Just a monthly contribution would be awesome. And if you go to the Patreon, it also gives you extra privileges. I do talk fast. It would give you extra privileges on the Discord as well. But you can go to erevosis.com and find the Discord and find my store that has a lot of cool Ukrainian themed shirts, things like that. All right, I will do a quick summary of the news and then we will get over to the Discord. So this was the summary of the news we talked about tonight. American Defense Secretary and the Russian Defense Minister held a phone call today. They did not release the details, but from the general message put out there, it sounds like the call went well, and it's probably a good thing that they're talking. It is a good thing that they're talking. Russia conducted 3 missile attacks and 24 airstrikes in the past day. In Kherson, the Russians are at risk of losing the main city of Kherson very quickly. There are more reports of looting by Russian troops in the northern region of Kherson and the town of Kherson before the Russians leave. There's a report that they went to a local fire station and stole the fire trucks, being the wonderful humanitarians that they are. Moscow claims that 4 civilians, including 2 Russian journalists, were killed when the Ukrainians attacked Russian troops on a pontoon bridge that the Russians were constructing across the Dnipro River, which is there in Kherson as well, because the Russians are starting to withdraw. Russia has sent a further 2,000 recently mobilized fighters to fight in Kherson, which is sad news for them because these are folks who are getting no military training whatsoever. They're not even getting supplies. And, sorry, my allergies are kicking in. They even had to crowdfund ammunition for their rifles. I mean, that was pretty sad. There, as we just talked about, there's growing concerns about the Russians possibly launching a false flag attack on the Kakhovka hydroelectric plant, which encompasses a dam. Zelensky says it's been mined. More proof the sanctions are working. Moscow has been forced to cannibalize existing airline parts, and production on Putin's favorite hypersonic ballistic missile has all but stopped. The threat of Belarus and Russia invading from the north, UK military intelligence says, is still a bluff, is their analysis. There was a new UN report on war crimes in Ukraine that came out and documented a number of additional war crimes from the Russians. And you can go to my store, which you can find. Sorry, somebody's asking about t-shirts. You can go to my store, which you can find via erevosis.com. All the listings are there. I believe it's store.erevosis.com, my last name, which is my TikTok handle. Store.erevosis.com should take you to the store for the current t-shirts. I've got to do more t-shirts. In any case, a lot of Russian war crimes, and what they said was they've only documented 2 Ukrainian war crimes to date against 2 Russian soldiers. That's it. All the other war crimes have been Russian. Russia is messing again with grain exports. Zelensky says 150 ships are now backlogged. And there was an industrial enterprise fire in Belgorod, Russia, after it was hit by a projectile, but nobody quite knows exactly what happened. All right, guys, thank you so much. TikTokers, you've been amazing. Moderators, everybody, appreciate the gifts. The YouTubers, the mighty Twitchers, everybody else, very much appreciate the gifts from you guys today. You've been very generous. Please do follow me, TikTokers. Click that little follow button, because we do this every night. Like I said, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm also doing a number of videos during the day. I will also do videos this weekend, just updating you on more of the Ukraine news, some of the other news going around as well. As I promised that other guy, I will also try to pay attention to a little more what's going on in Iran the last couple of days to give you some updates there. But thank you, moderators. You are always lovely, and especially on TikTok. I know what it's like. I have moderated before. Should be interesting to see what happens with the UK in the next few days, whether they get a new prime minister anytime soon, and whether his name is Boris Johnson. Hey, Jason Morrow. Do you actually work for the Washington Post? Let me look here. No bio. Do you now? Although I defend I wasn't attacked. I was saying I defend you guys. I defend a lot. Well, actually, my crowd's pretty good. It's the conservatives who come on that get upset with you guys and CNN, but I'm always defending you all. Actually, I did defend you today. I don't know if you were listening. I did do that. That's right. Or did I do? No, you know what I did? It was somebody was attacking the Washington Post on one of my videos. And I told them the Post is probably one of the best, if not the best newspaper in the world, which I believe. But they said, the Washington Post, that's your source. And I'm like, dude, it doesn't get better than the Washington Post. So, I mean, I do subscribe to the Times and the Journal as well, but still, you're my hometown paper as of 30 years. Hold on, I'm Googling you, Jason. You're at the Post. Okay. I'm not seeing you come up as the Post. I'm seeing you come up as State Department. Oh, am I typing it wrong? Okay. Anyway, I'm going to believe you. Not seeing it, but I believe you. Anyway, nice to meet you guys. But yeah, I tried it. Well, again, I have a lot of respect for you guys. So, all right, guys. You're a conservative and you came here to get answers. Well, maybe next time. All right, guys, I'm going to go over to the Discord. Please feel free to join us. I'm not going to go too long because I don't want to get my voice lost again like we had a month and a half ago. The New York Times, exactly. Everyone's weighing in now. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. So yeah, guys, let's go over to discord.aravosis.com. And otherwise, I will be posting TikTok videos over the weekend. And we'll be back Monday. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all of this. You're fabulous. Have a good weekend. All right. I'm going to get rid of you guys first.